You sat with me in my suffering. You listened with love and without trying to make the pain go away. Thank you. Thank you.
Every week we have an opportunity to express our values through sharing our resources. This month in December, the Share the Plate recipient is the Central Austin Neighborhood Association, or CANA. As you know, CANA meets in our building every third Tuesday of the month, and CANA's intention is to unite institutions and residents to build and protect an excellent place to live, work, play, raise children, run a business, and worship here in Austin. The offering will now be received. Will the ushers please come forward? Would you rise in either body or in spirit and join me in the responsive reading, which is 490 in your gray hymnal, 490. I'll read the regular typeface and you'll respond with the words in italics, 490. You do not have to be good.
You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles to the desert of your contention.
You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves.
Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you about mine.
Meanwhile, the world goes on.
Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers.
Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again.
Wherever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like a wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
Will you join me in the sermon hymn, number 298, Wake Now My Senses? We'll be singing all 5 verses.
Senses and hear the earth call.
little story on myself. People who are close to me have learned to be nervous about my birthday. Almost as nervous as I am. Because honestly, I cannot remember a birthday in the last 15 years that hasn't involved tears. My own, sometimes other people's as well, but usually just me. For me, the birthday is just too much pressure. I crack under it. It's supposed to be fun and exciting. It's supposed to be everything. It's supposed to make me look cool. It's supposed to show how much love I have in the world and connection and excitement. And it's just too much. I cannot handle it. And I crack under the pressure. So I haven't quite gotten to the point yet where I have called off the birthday. I still lean into the dramatic expectation. I still attempt to reach for some sort of birthday celebration that mingles excitement with reasonableness. But I may, in fact, get to the point where birthdays must be called off altogether. For me, positive expectations can be painful. They cause suffering in my life because when I have these giant expectations about what is supposed to happen, I am inevitably disappointed when the most fantastic thing does not occur. Anything less than my wildest dreams of fabulousness is a disappointment. And even when the thing I'm expecting actually is fantastic, then it's only met my expectations. And ends up being sort of meh anyway. Nothing surprising, nothing exciting or unexpected. Expectations can work in the other way too. In Marilynne Robinson's book Lila, which is the prequel to her famous book Gilead, both members of a newly married couple have carried with them expectations of loss and suffering. The wife, Lila, was abused and abandoned as a child. Now, as a child, she had a few happy years with a woman who rescued her from her childhood home, by whom she felt loved and cared for the first time in her life. The two drifted from town to town in the late 1920s, and they worked odd jobs for food, occasionally for money. They lived outside. They spent nights together curled up by a fire, and they eventually joined with a small group of other people who were living in the same way. When the Depression set in, however, that little band of chosen family started fighting amongst themselves. They couldn't find work anymore, which they had always been able to before, because there were too many people now fighting for those same scraps. And the scraps themselves had dwindled, since many of the folks who used to be able to hire day laborers couldn't afford to anymore. Hunger and scarcity turned people to desperation and to cruelty. Lila's chosen family fell apart. And eventually even her chosen mother wandered off, seemingly out of a mix of shame and a mind deteriorating from age. Lila's new husband, who was much older than her and was at the end of his life, also carried expectations of suffering and loss. He had already had a family that he lost to a complicated childbirth. He grieved his lost child and wife his entire life and lived alone. He was a minister, and for decades he cared for the people of his parish, marrying them, baptizing their children, burying their dead, attending to their families, all the while living alone, coming home to a house empty of everything but grief and ghosts. The story, Lila, is a story of two lonely people who were pocked by the losses of the turn of the 20th century, but they chose to risk living again. Both of them were so conditioned by loss, so conditioned to the reality of mortality and impermanence, that the very concept of loving was intimately intertwined with grieving. Loving itself involved suffering. The characters are right, of course. This is the truth of living in fragile flesh. In her poem, Blackwater Woods, Mary Oliver writes, "To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go." When we learn this truth, when we learn what it is to live and to love in fragile flesh, to be a mortal among mortals, we learn the truth of impermanence. The law of the universe is change. All things, beauty and tragedy, love and grief, friends and foes, all things will pass. Knowing this deeply, knowing it at the core of our being, can make love terrifying. It can make living, truly feeling this world terrifying, because all of it will pass. To expect that it will pass in the midst of gripping love, in the midst of celebration of beauty and life, includes suffering. The violence that we have witnessed in this past week can make us especially fearful. Even though all flesh is fragile, even though car accidents are more likely to randomly and suddenly affect it, intentional acts of human harm shake us in a different way. They make us afraid because they cause us to question our neighbors, ourselves, and humanity. Why would anyone choose to cause such harm? What does the seeming increasing frequency of these acts of violence mean about our world? Who are we as a people? Are we just supposed to learn to expect this kind of cruelty? I don't think we should. We have expectations of mortality and impermanence, but we need not expect cruelty. It's not something we should be conditioned to experience. While we cannot prevent mortality, while we cannot change the nature of the law of impermanence, we can learn to change awful choices for harm. To expect the best can mean disappointment and disillusionment. To expect the worst can mean anxiety and despair and complacency. Where we are living, though, is right now. We are living wildly in a moment filled with great expectations. Expectations of ourselves and our loved ones and our lives. Expectations that we should be great, that we should be able to fix it, that our loved ones should be great, that our lives and all our doings should be great. Will I be able to be who my parents expect me to be? Will my child live up to all of my hopes for them? Will my grandchildren be the perfection that I expect? Will my work ever amount to anything? Will my life be as fantastic and impressive as it should be? we're also living in a moment filled with worry, expectations and anxiety for the inevitable losses of the future. And there are real things to be afraid of. Not only the reality of mortality, but the real pain of injustice all around us. Just in the last few weeks, we've witnessed a terrorist attack by a misogynist on a women's health clinic in Colorado. We're still in the midst of a war in Syria and flowing rivers of refugees. In the midst of mass incarceration as the new Jim Crow and the brutality of our criminal justice system, particularly as it is exacted on the bodies of people of color. We're living in the warmth today of climate change, which threatens to change the nature of the world itself. And on Wednesday, we witnessed the largest mass shooting incident in 3 years. Violence and injustice are part of the world that we're living in today. There are real things to worry about. There are real things to feel anxiety and despair about. I'm not telling you that they're not true. Our expectations threaten to flood the moment that we're living in with images of horrible possible futures. But all of those images of possible futures are obscuring the moment that we have. It's the only moment that we're alive in, which is right now. We don't know what will happen. We don't know. But right now is when something is happening. This is the truth. This is where we have the opportunity to experience life, to experience the joy and the pain, the peace and the violence, the suffering and the love and the strength. Saying yes to life means saying yes to right now and facing the truth of it in all of its complexity. It's not one thing. We experience the moment now by experiencing its emotion and getting real about what's happening. We need to show up for the suffering of our neighbors and ourselves. Be able to sit with it. Be present to lamentation. And we also need to show up for joy. Joy in the face of grief is not obscene. It's part of the truth of life. And it's part of how we find the strength and the courage to continue in the face of it. Joy and woe are woven fine. That's the fullness of being alive. There's no parsing them apart. There's no saying, I'll feel this, but I won't feel that. In a world of impermanence, joy and woe indicate each other. Feeling all of it fully, being really present to it opens us up to reality, to the truth, to the whole of being. Now, this is what we practice in meditation, but we practice in order to experience presence with our eyes wide open too. We practice in order to walk through the world fully open to all of the experiences of now. Open to our own feelings, but also to the feelings of those around us. Experiencing our loved ones as they are, rather than as we expect them to be. Who is your spouse today? Who is your child right now? Who are you in this moment? What would happen if you laid down your expectations and let yourself and your loved ones be as they are, whether that be joyful or grieving, whether that be angry or distant, needy or scared? What kind of encounter might result? So allowing the now doesn't mean complacency. It doesn't mean accepting injustice. We can both be open to the truth of this moment, fully open to it with our presence, and act to change the future. Saying yes to this moment doesn't mean that this moment is forever. In fact, we know it's not. But this is the moment when we can do something that makes a difference. Now is the only moment we have to act, to create beauty. Now is the moment that we get to confront injustice. Now is when we have the opportunity to give comfort and courage to people as diverse as this world. We may not know what the future is, but right now we make choices that affect it. Looking at the enormous possibilities for grief and for suffering, or the enormous possibilities for greatness and doing great things, is overwhelming. But right now you can choose to do one thing, just one thing, to create beauty. You can choose to do one thing that confronts injustice. You can bring one person comfort right now. You can bring one person encouragement. This is the moment you're alive. This is the one that has potency for possibility. This is the moment that's aching for your love and your attention, your encouragement, your full presence. Turn to your neighbor now. Tell them you're here with them now. May it be so, and blessed be.
Me too.
Will you join me in rising in your spirit and say yes to life? Closing hymn number 6. All of this is true at once. There is love, there is violence, there is grief, there is despair, there is hope, there is connection. Above you, you will find the day-blind stars waiting with their light. The sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes. Rest in the grace of the world. May it be so, and blessed be. Though we extinguish the light of the chalice here, we carry its light and its warmth with us in our hearts.
He kind of like stuck out.
Oh.